So I like to say, save the world one cob ball at a time, because you got to start somewhere. Right, so my name is Miguel Elliott. I'm with a service called Living Earth Structures, right? I've also known as Sir Cob-a-lot. I was knighted years ago when I discovered that my life purpose is to spread natural building, cob construction, to the world. So I'm based out of Sonoma County, but I do stuff all over. I do stuff in Mendocino, all up and down the coast, and do a lot of traveling also. I teach workshops, teach people how to build structures using earth right from the ground, right? So that's what I'm here today at Bioneers, is to share the joys, the wonders, the possibilities of earth building, right? Yeah. So the material I work with is called cob, right? So cob is a mixture of sand, clay, and straw, right? So I get the earth, usually the clay, right from the ground, right, on site, ideally, and mix it with sand and straw. The process involves, mixing up with the feet. It's a lot of fun.
Like little cob dance.
Yeah, they do the cob dance, right? It kind of massages the feet, and then I take that earthen mixture and I sculpt things out of it, right? And then it dries in the sun. And then if you plaster and put a nice roof on it, it'll last forever. That's why there's structures built in England 600 years ago that all built out of earth and that are still being lived in, right? Kind of the three rules of cob is that you need good boots, a good jacket, and a good hat, right? So a foundation, the plaster, and the roof. If it's got those three things, there's no reason why it won't last hundreds and hundreds of years.
Okay, so can you tell me about the structure that you brought here and how it was built and all about that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so this is a mobile hut, right? So this is, I call it the Caboose, a little brown caboose. And this is made out of wooden shipping pallets, right? Wooden shipping pallets put upright, insulated with straw, and then covered in an earthen cob plaster, right? So, so that's why I call it the Caboose. I also call it the palatable cobbin, right? Because it's pallets and cob, right? And so, so I've been doing, natural building work for a long time. I've done straw bale and adobe and cobbed and ram earth, and from my experience, I think that this is the quickest way, the most efficient way of building earthen structures, because it can be framed in just a couple days. You can, put your used shipping pallets that you get all for free, put those upright, insulate it with straw, and then put your earth over it. Have work parties, put your earth over the pallets. And so, so like this here, I built in just a couple days. I just finished building a house up at the Solar Living Center in Hopland, Mendocino County, and it took 6 weeks to build. Took less than $2,000 to build the materials. And it's super well insulated. You go inside on a hot day, it's much cooler, and when it cools off at night, it's much warmer. It's nice and round, right? Stained glass and arched doors and round windows and a living roof, allowing you to live like a hobbit, right? And so that's there as a model, a demonstration to show what we can build using this alternative building technique. Right? So, and I've also been working with an engineer, a structural engineer, to have this design of the palatable cobbin, a little 120 square foot round structure built to code. So actually on the side of the caboose, I have the drawings that shows how the foundation, the uprights, the roof, all the supports, everything is all built to code. So if somebody wants to build a nice round pallet cob house, they could take these plans that I've been working with the engineer and submit this to the building department and actually have it legal to live in. And so what the implications of that is that allows you, if somebody wanted to build a larger house, instead of using conventional fiberglass insulation and wood studs and drywall and paint, all of which is toxic, that you can use straw, pallets, and cob, right? Which is all natural and free and fire resilient, and it feels so nice to be inside of an earth structure.
And very affordable too, it sounds like. Yeah, it sounds like
free.
Amazing.
The whole low income, like homeless issue, it does not need to be as complicated as they're all making it out to be. What I'm advocating is allow them to help build it, right? Give them the opportunity to help design it, to help sculpt it, to sculpt trees on the walls, to arch out the doorways, to round out the windows, to make it creative, to make it theirs the way that they want it, and give them the chance to learn a skill that they can then go and help somebody else build their house, and maybe even earn some income, from that too.
So the housing crisis, these are amazing solutions for things like the housing crisis. And I think it would also really help with people who are on the streets, or people like with drug abuse and all these other problems. It's really like tying in and becoming like this root solution for all of these different things.
Right,
so,
right. Now, I was in Oakland a couple years ago, and there's a guy living on the streets and the sidewalk, and I spent a day with a permaculture design crew. We spent half a day building him a house. There was pallets there for free, straw there for free, earth there for free, wood for the roof there for free. I didn't spend anything on building him this little, it was a small 4 feet by 8 feet, but it was big enough for him to have a sense of dignity, to be able to have his own space. Had a little lock on his door, so he had some privacy, and a roof over his head. That night after he finished it, it rained, but he was inside of a structure. So things like that, like, why not just provide small little houses for people that need these houses? If it's not a money issue, their concern is that it's too small of a space, that it's too low of a standard of living. It's like, no, this would be so deluxe for somebody who's been living on the street. And so I'm very excited about bringing this type of construction, earth building, to the public. I think it's great to be at a place like this where people come to be inspired, right? And I want to turn that inspiration into action, so they can learn some about, how to mix up the mix, and then build something for themselves.
Yeah, helping inspire the next generation, and helping show people that there is other ways of building, not just living in houses that are quite toxic for people, but living in a way that is actually more healthy for you and the environment.
Exactly. And that's actually what's interesting, with these fires that just happened in the area up in Santa Rosa, Napa, and all over. The amount of attention now that's put on these toxic buildings. They're all contaminated. You can't go near the house because the house is so toxic, and it's like people are, I think, now becoming a lot more aware how toxic these houses are that they've been living in, and so I think there's a really great opportunity here now, especially now, to demonstrate some alternative building techniques, that are not toxic, that are actually completely, perfectly safe, and actually good for you to be around. Yeah.
So what do you think people can do in their everyday lives to kind of transition to more of this type of lifestyle? What do you think that people can do in their everyday lives to make a more positive impact?
Well, of course, my focus is on earth building. I think being involved in community projects, that's one of the reasons why I do this kind of work, is that it helps promote community. Sometimes I even think that the natural building, the earth structures, is kind of a front for the actual community building aspect of it. It's an activity that the community can come do together. So I think being connected with your community, with your neighbors, and doing activities together, seeing each other on a regular basis, and then earth building is one activity that you can do together with your community. To become stronger, to be more resilient. And for somebody who wants to kind of experiment with earth building, just going out to your backyard, you don't have to go far, just go to your backyard, experiment with it, dig a hole in the ground, get that earth.
Building sand castles, having fun.
You gotta start somewhere, right?
Yeah.
Right? And so sometimes building a pizza oven is a great way to start. So if somebody wants to build a house, an earth house, I often recommend that they build a wood-fired cob pizza oven first.
Starting small and experimenting.
Start small, because that'll give you the experience of doing the foundation, the plastering, the roof, some of the sculpting, mixing it up, the proportions. And then you have something to offer to people when they come to do the work parties and things. Everybody loves wood-fired pizza, and so that's a great way to bring people together.
Bring community together, yeah. So on that note, how did you find the inspiration to do this, or what kind of led you to the beginning of this movement?
You know what it was, actually? I mean, thinking back, what it was fourth grade field trip. 9 years old, going to General Vallejo's old adobe fortress here in Petaluma, just a half hour north of here. And I remember as a child going into this structure with earth walls, you know, these big thick walls. It was a hot day, and I remember experiencing natural air conditioning. And I remember that was fascinating. That fascinated me. It was nice and cool on a hot day. So I remember that was like really like, wow. And then just the concept of using the earth right from the ground to make these adobe bricks, and that it was still there, you know, almost 200 years ago, and that it's still there, and like longer than any other wooden structure. And so I was just very fascinated by that. And but then back in, I guess it was right out of college in the mid-90s, I was exposed to a video. It was called Building with the Earth. That's why I really believe in the power of video as a way to inspire. And so in this video, it was called Building with the Earth, put out by the Cobb Cottage Company, the people who actually brought you know, earth building to America, you know, Cobb building. And so they talked about the concept of Cobb. That was the first time I ever heard about it. And they go into philosophy and the idea, the concept of building a house for $500. And so everything about it just resonated, and I knew that that was what I was going to devote my life to.
So the world is at a pretty critical, like, tipping point right now, some people would say. There's a lot of crazy things that are happening. So do you think that there's like hope for the future? And if you do, what is that hope for you?
So right now, we're in a situation where we've had a disaster. Disasters are going to continue happening. And we need to think, okay, what is the smartest way to rebuild? You know, is it the same way that we've been doing over and over and over again? Or can we consider an alternative? So I think, like, now I've been meeting with government, city officials and talking with them, and there's a lot of other people who are also. And there's a lot of discussions about considering alternatives and knowing that we need to come up with some creative solutions on how to rebuild and how to move forward from here. And so I'm excited, and yes, I have a lot of hope because of the receptivity that we have, at least here in this area in California, you know, to considering alternatives. And I like to say brown is the new green, right? So earth building, I think really is, it's the most sustainable way you can build. There's nothing more green than using the earth right from the ground to build. And the amount of wood that's out there that has been like burned that can be milled is amazing. I mean, there's no reason why anybody should be going out and buying plywood or buying 4x4s or buying wood that has been harvested unsustainably, which the majority of people are doing. So there really needs to be a whole movement of doing this kind of building in a much more progressive way. And I think that we're seeing that now. And yes, and I think as long as we keep our hearts and our minds and our ears open to new possibilities, you know, and are willing to try out something new and to learn from the past, not think that in the past was inferior, but actually be inspired and turn that inspiration into action, I think is, I think that's really important. So I like to say, you know, save the world one cob ball at a time, you know, because you got to start somewhere. You got to start somewhere. And so if it's your introduction on connecting with the earth and with the community and with yourself and, you know, just, you know, and smart building, if it's just making one ball and feeling that with your hands, and there's nothing more real than the earth. It is the most constant, stable, you know, consistent thing that we have to work with. And you know, and it's pretty predictable. Like if we protect it right, if we sculpt it with it, and you plaster and protect it right, it's gonna stay like that. It's not gonna mold. It's not gonna fall apart. It's not gonna crack. It's very reliable.